morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today we're going to catch up on some late-breaking news stories from last week that are actually pretty darn interesting. In fact, my favorite story of the day is the third story, but it's in that spot because I don't think it's going to drive a lot of viewer traffic, unfortunately. Hopefully that will change as this project comes to fruition. And you know what? Maybe the show in question, which is the genesis for this news story, is popular. I am seeing some murmurings of people discussing, well, you can see the photo, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, so maybe it's more popular than it seems at first glance. But anyway, I can't risk it, so we're going to start out with what has proven to be popular currently, and that's anything to do with Marvel. And of course, that's be it the Disney studio or the Fox studio, which have split the Marvel properties like, you know, King Solomon splits children. And the studios were okay with it, so that just goes to show you the cruel nature of, the movie business. So anyway, what's the first story that everybody is interested in across the globe? Well, it's the revelation that the Russo brothers don't have a Twitter account, which shocked, I repeat shocked, both the media and fans alike when this ruse was exposed at the end of last week by none other than James Gunn, who happens to be like a Marvel truth cannon, not only revealing that that was a fake Twitter account, but also, he has some credibility here because he was the first person to reveal that Marvel would not be going to Comic-Con this year. So James Gunn can be trusted with his tweets. People might not always like what he says, but he always says the truth in what he means. So anyway, he said the Russo brothers aren't on Twitter, which again blew everybody's mind. Because here's what happened. Starting on July 7th, the Twitter account @Russo_brothers seems legit to me. I guess if it doesn't have that blue check next to it, you shouldn't trust it. I mean, if someone's of the caliber of the Russo brothers, of course. Interestingly, you cannot apply for a blue check to say that your Twitter account is indeed you. Twitter has to somehow reach out to you and decide that you're worth a blue check. So sadness for those of us who don't have blue checks. So embarrassing, but I told you that story anyway because I try to be a truth cannon myself. But anyway, so this Twitter account was tweeting photos, very cryptic photos that seemed to be from the set of Captain America Civil War. It was close-ups of what seemed like a costume or a set piece. And people were trying to decipher these clues that were being left for them like breadcrumbs. Because, that's a fun thing to do. It's become a big part of the movie culture and just, pop culture in general. And, it's something that really these big movies should be doing. Look at Bryan Singer, look at David Ayer. So it makes perfect sense that the Russo brothers were, I think, in large part, doing their job. But then again, they were not. That's not the Russo brothers. Again, as James Gunn said, the Russo brothers are not on Twitter. So that made headlines in and of itself, and I'm sure this has all been very amusing for the Russo brothers overall. However, I think this leads to an even bigger question, and that's why aren't the Russo brothers on Twitter? Everybody should be on Twitter who is at all involved in the popular arts. That's a coin that I saw first at Comic-Con, I think a few years ago. They said celebrating the popular arts, and I was like, man, that is a good phrase. I really like that term. I'm gonna go with it. That's really smart. So kudos to you, Comic-Con, for coming up with that. And I feel that anyone involved with the popular arts should be on social media because it's quite popular. And again, this is part of the game we play these days. We like teases, we like to discuss things in advance, it's interesting, it's fun to do, so the Russo brothers should be tweeting stuff. They don't have to tweet exactly what these fake Russo brothers tweeted, but they should be, in on the discussion. Now, Joss Whedon, of course, disagrees, and I'm sure some of you do as well, but I think it's something to discuss. I mean, it certainly helps everybody who's on Twitter. I mean, a lot of the most recent successful films did well, and they had very large social media presences. From Jurassic World with Chris Pratt to Furious 7 with everybody involved in Furious 7. Even Dwayne Johnson was able to power San Andreas to, I think, a really good position publicity-wise with his social media, bulletins. So I think everyone should be on social media, and I can't believe that the Russo brothers are not. You would think that Marvel would have that stipulated in the contracts. Alright, so anyway, that's the first story of the day, and I'm curious how you feel about it, and as if you were as shocked as everyone else to discover the ruse. All right, so the second story of the day is over at Fox with another group of Marvel properties, and that's X-Men and Fantastic Four. And Bryan Singer got everybody talking, because again, Bryan Singer is very good at playing this game, and he said, I gotta say, there is a chance for a Fantastic Four X-Men crossover. I don't know when, I don't know exactly how, but we're talking about it. Or, perhaps more accurately, Simon Kinberg is merely thinking about it because Simon Kinberg, who we discussed on the show last week, works on both franchises. So, since he's the architect for both, it's a conversation he can really have with himself. Now, a lot of people are hopeful for a shared cinematic universe over at Fox with their Marvel properties. However, I think that's going to get mad confusing super fast. But I have other problems with this crossover even beyond that, which I'll discuss in a moment. But as for Bryan Singer, he said, oh, well, you know, it would be a great fit because they both have a team ensemble dynamic, and then we can bring them together through, a certain means. And he hinted that means had to do with time. So I guess time travel, because that's such a big part of the X-Men universe now, although how did that happen? It was supposed to just be for X-Men Days of Future Past, then we got messed up with the prequel of First Class, and now they're stuck in the 80s, and it looks like they're not going to leave the past anytime soon. I am not a fan of that. I was like, this was fun at first, but if you had told me that the X-Men were going to stay stuck in the past, in a never-ending episode of Mad Men, I perhaps would not have been so keen on doing that if I knew we were not going to leave. So I'm curious to how you feel about that element of the news story. But moving forward, I don't think that it's a good idea to cross over these two teams because I think it's really redundant. They are two ensemble teams, and I think that, members of the team serve pretty similar purposes, right? A guy made of ice, a guy made of rocks. You've got your super geniuses on both teams. You've got the female character that everyone's secretly in love with, be it Jean Grey or I guess Mystique now. I guess they're both redheads, whatever. And Jennifer Lawrence is like, I'm not wearing that damn wig anymore. And they're like, you gotta do it. But anyway, and then you have Sue Storm, who of course everybody has a crush on over in the Fantastic Four. But even beyond the power dynamic, how do you separate, we're not mutants, we were in the negative zone and that's how we got our powers. Whatever, tomato, tomato, you both have weird powers and, they're not consistent across the board. You each have your own unique set of abilities. Whatever. But also, they're all teenagers now. They're all or 20-somethings or whatever age they're at currently. They're all, ridiculously, aged down because Hollywood feels that's the only demographic that matters, despite being consistently proven wrong on that count. But anyway, I just don't think it's a good match, and I think that if they were to make this crossover, it would smack of a business decision, although Jurassic World, as we've discussed, is one of the most corporate films ever made, and it's a huge hit. So maybe this would be a success. We'll see. But I'm curious to how you feel about it. How do you feel about how it's developing? And do you have any interest in this at all? All right, so the third story of the day, oh boy, this is the one I really like. This is about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I have tried to bring this show up anytime that I can in the last few weeks. I'm in love with it. I've heard some people who also like it say it's as good as Game of Thrones, and I would actually agree with that. And I'm sad that it's only a mini-series and not an ongoing series. But it's available on BBC On Demand or iTunes, but I just really recommend that you watch it. I've also heard some people say it's on YouTube, but it's just really a spectacular show, especially if you like magic and if you like Game of Thrones. I think you'll really like it. But anyway, good news for the director of the series, who just landed his first feature film. And this guy doesn't have a shabby resume. Not only did he make a big splash with Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but he previously directed episodes of Sherlock, Doctor Who, and Being Human. So, a really awesome dude. So, everyone's really impressed with the series, though, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So he just got picked up to direct Sony and Working Title. Working Title is a very big production company out of the UK, but their new Oliver musical. And this sounds so good. The only bad aspect of this story is that now Wes Anderson can't do Oliver the musical, which I think I felt he would be very good at, and a number of you agreed with me on that point. But anyway, so this is how this project is coming together. It's going to be directed by this person, Toby Haynes, from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and the aesthetic there is very good, and it has a little bit of a flourish to it, that show, showmanship, because it is about magicians. So I think he's a very good fit with the material. Also, by the way, the actor who plays Jonathan Strange, I think Bertie Carvel, I think I might be pronouncing his name wrong or getting it just a little bit off. I didn't expect to say him by name. I love him. As I've said on Twitter, he's the British Paul Rudd. But anyway, he was actually in Matilda playing the school teacher in drag, and he was Tony nominated for that role. And he's really fantastic and a really talented individual. And maybe he'll pop up in Oliver because he has that musical background. That would be fantastic. Although considering who I'm about to reveal momentarily, it's going to be it's going to be a Sophie's choice here. But anyway, so let me get back to how, this thing is coming together. So Oliver is going to be produced by Sony in working title, a new musical. It's going to be written by Billy Elliott's Lee Hall, who wrote the script for that film. And then Cameron Mackintosh is going to produce. Now, if you aren't familiar with that name, you aren't familiar with British theater, because Cameron Mackintosh is one of the most successful and prolific producers of the British stage, particularly musicals. This guy's huge. So big that Disney brought him across the pond a couple of years ago to produce their Mary Poppins musical that played on Broadway. It actually debuted, I believe, on the West End. That had mixed reviews. I actually saw it. It was pretty good. The set was the most impressive thing about it, but he's a very, very prominent, name talent in the world of theater. So anyway, he actually produced Oliver back in 2008 for the London stage on the West End. It was a huge commercial success. There was actually a reality show to cast the role of Nancy in the musical. But get this, Rowan Atkinson played Fagin. How wonderful is that? So I'm not sure who I'd like to see in the role of Fagin in the movie, Rowan Atkinson or Bernie Carvel. I think either one would be phenomenal. And I don't know who to choose. I really like both of them. But this sounds like a fantastic project. So get excited for that. And go watch Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. At least try it. It's really something special. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now on to the viewer question. Now this is from Elsie Clark, who asked me a really fun question that I thought a number of you would have a good time discussing as well. And also I'd like to hear your rankings down below. Yes, it's a rankings question. So Elsie says, Grace, love your channel and I have a question. Excellent, Elsie. Thank you so much. She says, I've just seen Inside Out. It came out so late in the UK. I know their foreign rollout is ridiculous, and that's why Minions is beating them to a pulp at the box office. Inside Out's by no means a failure. It just crossed 500 million, but it's about 150 million behind Minions. But anyway, more on that in a moment. But Elsie says, and I wanted to get your thoughts on animation. Around this time last year, I asked you which animation studios you thought were on top and which were at the bottom. Last year you said it went Disney, Illumination Entertainment, DreamWorks Animation, Sony Animation, Pixar, and then Blue Sky. My question this time is the same. Do you think that in just 1 year this order has changed? And why? Is the animation market too crowded and unoriginal? I love to hear your thoughts. Hugs from England. Smiley face. Hugs right back at you, Elsie. What a fantastic question. Fun for everyone. And a follow-up question from last year. I love it. All right, so let me answer your question. I feel the ranking has changed a little bit. All right, so who's at the top? I think Disney is still at the top. I think Big Hero 6 was a little bit of a slip, and they didn't have a movie this year, but still, Frozen still looms large over all of us. And Disney has done a wonderful job keeping it in front of everyone. And they continue to have new theme park offerings. That Frozen Fever short that came out this year and was a huge phenomenon for just a couple of minutes. And I think that, I think they're going to make some big news in just a few weeks with at the D23 Expo with some headlines there. So I think Disney still tops. Next up, I feel that Illumination Entertainment is still in second place because they just have such a strong fan base and such a strong interest in their work. Not only is Minions burning up the box office, but The Secret Life of Pets trailer has also performed very strongly. So I think they have another hit on the horizon for them. So they're very strong. And they might not be as creatively strong. Well, actually, I don't agree with that. I guess not as critic-friendly as perhaps Disney Animation and the next up on the list, Pixar, but box office-wise and with the fan base, they couldn't be connecting better. All right, so third, I would say that Pixar jumped up to third place. Now, while I didn't personally enjoy Inside Out, it's certainly been very well received overall. The critics have enjoyed it, and its box office is strong. Not as strong as the 1 and 2, their box office contenders, but still very, very respectable. And I think to some degree a return to form for the studio. So I think Pixar definitely back up towards the top to third place. Ideally, of course, I'd like to get to 1 or 2. They occupy the #1 spot for a very long time, but right now I'm putting them at 3. Then next, I would actually put Warner Brothers Animation because they have so much potential. The Lego Movie was a huge success. They're really working hard to expand upon that, and I'm just very excited to see what comes out of Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers is trying very hard to be adult-friendly. They also have the Minecraft movie coming up, and I think they're going to be really smart with their choices. And I think it's also going to differentiate them from the competition, that they're a little bit more adult-friendly, a little more clever than the other films, animation films that are coming out. So I would put Warner Brothers Animation at 4th place. Then next I put Sony Animation. They're in a pretty strong place as well. Hotel Transylvania 2 is getting a lot of traction. I think that's going to do very well. They also are distributing the Angry Birds movie. They didn't animate it, but it's still coming from the Sony studio, and that's animated. And also they just won that deal for the Emoji Movie. So I think Sony Animation is also in a very good place. Also, they're dabbling in live action with the upcoming Goosebumps movie, and we'll see how that does. So it's Disney, Illumination Entertainment, Pixar, Warner Brothers Animation, Sony Animation, and then I would put Paramount Animation because SpongeBob did also very well at the box office, and now Paramount's trying to get in here as well. As you can see, Elsie, a lot more players this year. Then at the very end, I'm afraid that Blue Sky still sits at the bottom. Now that's despite Charlie Brown, the Peanuts movie that's coming up, which I think looks fantastic. But I feel that it's not getting any traction with the general public. I think people aren't really paying attention to the trailers for that film, which is a shame. And I just don't know, even though the Peanuts is a tradition on the small screen, if people are going to get excited about it on the big screen, especially when, as you stated, Elsie, it's so crowded at the box office within the release schedule. I just don't know if there's room for Peanuts, and Blue Sky might have, made a bad bet there. So I'm curious to how you guys would rank the animation studios. One more time, this is my ranking. It goes Disney, Illumination Entertainment, Pixar, Warner Brothers Animation, Sony Animation, Paramount Animation, and then Blue Sky Studios, which, by the way, is also distributed by Fox. Oh my God, DreamWorks Animation isn't even on the list. Oh my God, I am shocked. What does that say about DreamWorks? Where would I put them? Oh my God. Kung Fu Panda 3, I'm excited about it, but they're in a bad way over there. Nobody would buy them, and then when they finally found a buyer, Disney torpedoed it. Oh, they're just like on the ropes. I guess I would go, but I think people really have a lot of love for their product, but they just can't get no respect. I guess I'll go Disney, Illumination Entertainment, Pixar, Warner Brothers, then DreamWorks Animation, then Sony, then Paramount, and then Blue Sky. All right, your turn. And Elise, I hope you'll chime in here as well. Or Elsie, sorry, Elsie. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question from Elsie. Thank you so much, Elsie. Hugs right back at you. That was so endearing, such a charming way to sign your tweet. Your comment on YouTube. Thank you so much for that. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some other episodes right now.